It was the kind of morning where the world held its breath, teetering on the edge of night and day, just before the first golden rays of sunrise dared to pierce the horizon. Could you feel it? That crisp, biting chill in the air, laced with the faint scent of dew-kissed grass and the low, distant hum of machinery rumbling from the military base. He walked alone every Sunday morning, always at that sacred hour, his steps slow and deliberate, a quiet rhythm that seemed to whisper secrets into the shadows. No uniform, no crisp salute, just a worn green jacket hanging loose on his frail frame, a scratched thermos tucked under one arm, and a stillness that clung to the air long after he'd passed. Most of the young Marines bustling around the base barely noticed him. Who was he, anyway? They figured he was just a groundskeeper or some retired staffer, a harmless old man faded into the background, forgotten by time. That is, until one of them, Private First Class Luis Reyes, caught a glimpse of something that stopped him dead in his tracks. Oh, what a moment that was! A fleeting peek at the old man's forearm when a rogue gust of wind lifted his sleeve, revealing a tattoo that wasn't just ink, it was a story, etched in blood and memory, a mark that screamed of a past too heavy to ignore. And what it meant? It changed everything. Welcome to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories, where tales of courage and kindness pierce through the shadows and light up our souls. Let's dive into what really unfolded that day, because, trust me, this is a story that'll grip your heart and refuse to let go. Picture this, a wall standing solemn and unyielding at the far edge of the base, just past the barracks and the motor pool, tucked into a quiet stretch where the wind seemed to hush itself in reverence. It wasn't some grand monument adorned with marble statues or gilded lettering, no, it was simpler, humbler, just a long, matte black slab etched with hundreds of names, each one a silent echo of sacrifice. No triumphant music swelled in the background, no flags snapped dramatically in the breeze, just pure, unbroken silence. And every Sunday, like the ticking of some unseen clock, the old man arrived just before dawn. How did he get there? No one ever saw him drive up or shuffle in, he was simply there, standing still as a statue, hands buried deep in his pockets, head slightly bowed as if in prayer. He never reached out to touch the wall, never laid flowers at its base, never even sat to rest his weary legs. He just stood, always at the same panel, always in the same spot, section 3, row 5, locked in a private vigil that no one dared to interrupt. Then, after 20 minutes or so, never a second more or less, he'd turn and walk away without a word. Same faded green jacket, same polished but ancient boots, same dented thermos cradled under his arm. A quiet, unbroken loop, week after week, as predictable as the sunrise itself. At first, most of the Marines didn't even clock him. Why would they? They were too caught up in the grind, formation drills, chow runs, weekend rotations, gear checks, life on the base didn't leave much room for curiosity. Those who did catch a glimpse shrugged him off as base maintenance, maybe a civilian contractor with nowhere better to be on a Sunday morning. He didn't wear a name tag, didn't salute, didn't speak a word. A few of the guys even cracked jokes, can you believe it, calling him a ghost, some relic from a war long over who hadn't gotten the memo that time had moved on. But one Marine saw more. Oh, he saw so much more. Private First Class Luis Reyes was only 19, with eyes sharp as a hawk and a heart full of respect that ran deeper than most. He'd grown up on the edges of stories, Vietnam tales whispered around his family's kitchen table, where old photos stayed hidden in drawers and names were spoken in hushed, reverent tones. So when he spotted the old man one morning, just after chow, standing alone in that eerie dawn silence, something about it lodged in his chest like a splinter. The stillness, the unwavering routine, the way no one else even bothered to look, it haunted him. What was it about this man? Reyes couldn't shake it, so he started paying attention. The old man's posture, straight as a rod but never rigid, like he'd carried burdens too heavy to slump under. His boots, polished to a shine but worn thin, relics of a life well traveled. His thermos, scratched and dented, not some shiny store-bought thing but a keepsake, handed down through years of use. And that wall, he always stopped at the same spot. Section 3, Row 5. Reyes checked it once, sneaking a glance when no one was around. 7 names stared back at him, all carved from the same year, 1970. Who were they? What tied this man to them? He didn't breathe a word of it to anyone, not yet. Instead, he started waking up earlier on Sundays, slipping out before the rest of the barracks stirred, just to watch. He kept his distance, quiet as a shadow, because there was something in the old man's silence that screamed he hadn't come for company. Interrupt him, and this fragile ritual might vanish like smoke. But everything changed one morning when the wind decided to play its part. It was barely past 0600, the sky still bruised with night, when Reyes crunched down the gravel path behind the barracks. His uniform was crisp, his steps soft, his mind already drifting towards Sunday drills. But like always, he paused at the edge of the trees near the wall, leaning against the splintered wooden railing, watching from afar. The old man was there, same as ever, head tilted slightly toward that dark granite slab, as steady as the earth itself. The air felt colder that morning, sharp and deep, the kind of chill that made silence feel alive. Reyes was about to turn back, honest, when a sudden gust swept through the yard, fierce enough to rattle the leaves and tug at the old man's sleeve. Just an inch, that's all it took, and there it was, the tattoo. Not some loud, garish thing with skulls or flames or unit slogans. No, this was different, subtle, a clean line of ink etched across his forearm, faded into his weathered skin like it belonged there. You could miss it if you weren't looking, but Reyes was looking, and what he saw wasn't anything from today's Marine Corps. No eagle, globe, and anchor, no rank insignia, just 5 numbers, a stark triangle, and a symbol he couldn't pin down. What was that? It felt old, heavy, like a secret carved into flesh, not just ink on skin. His heart thudded hard in his chest. Could you hear it? Because this wasn't some weekend warrior's tattoo or a retiree's boast. This was earned, marked by blood and time, a quiet badge of something extraordinary. Back in his bunk that night, Reyes couldn't sit still. He grabbed a crumpled receipt and sketched it from memory, his pencil trembling as he traced the 5 numbers, the triangle, that strange, haunting symbol. What did it mean? He had to know. That night, he cornered his sergeant, holding out the sketch like it was a treasure map. The man barely glanced at it before shrugging. Some Cold War thing, maybe, he muttered, voice gruff. Classified stuff, not our era. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, best not to dig into those kinds of stories, Reyes. Guys like that, if they want to talk, they will. If they don't, they won't. But oh, how that warning only fanned the flames. Reyes couldn't let it go, would you? He hit the internet, fingers flying over the keyboard, chasing shadows through dead-end searches. No public records, no insignia lists matched that shape. 2 hours dragged by, his eyes burning, until he stumbled into a forgotten corner of a veterans forum. One user had posted a similar tattoo years back, begging for answers. No one replied publicly, but a private message had slipped through days later, Delta 7 MACVSOG, Laos, 70. Don't ask again. Reyes froze, staring at the screen, his breath caught in his throat. MACVSOG, Military Assistance Command, Vietnam, Studies and Observations Group. A covert unit that operated in the blackest shadows of the Vietnam War. And Delta 7? That was beyond classified, it was legend, whispered only among those who knew the cost of silence. The old man wasn't just a veteran, he was a ghost from a war America tried to bury, a warrior whose battles were fought in darkness and left etched on his skin. The next Sunday, Reyes couldn't wait. He was there before the stars faded, heart pounding with a mix of awe and nerves, stepping closer than he ever had before. The old man didn't flinch, didn't turn, just stood there, eyes locked on the wall like always. Reyes hovered a few feet back, barely breathing, drinking in the sight of that tattoo up close. The skin around it was pale and wrinkled, but the ink held firm, those 5 numbers, that triangle, that ghost of a symbol. It wasn't decoration, It was a signature, a mark you weren't meant to flaunt. Reyes swallowed hard, his voice trembling as he whispered, "Sir, if I may, was that Delta 7? For 5 agonizing seconds, the world stopped. The old man didn't move. Had he even heard? Then, slowly, so slowly, he turned his head, just enough to meet Reyes's gaze. Oh, what a look that was! In those eyes, Reyes saw a lifetime, pain, loss, brotherhood, and a strength that didn't need to shout. Once, the old man rasped, his voice like gravel over stone. Just one word, but it hit like a thunderclap, carrying decades of weight. Then he turned back to the wall, as if nothing had happened. But for Reyes, it was everything. He'd been right, this wasn't some base ghost or groundskeeper. This was history, alive and breathing, showing up every Sunday not for glory or ritual, but for memory, pure and simple. And here's the kicker, Reyes wasn't the only one who felt it. Private Buckner had been jogging laps nearby, his sneakers pounding the dirt, when he'd stopped, drawn by the electric charge of that moment. What was it about the old man that pulled you in? By the next week, a third Marine paused his morning run. Then a fourth joined, then more, until a quiet crowd gathered each Sunday, not to gawk or pry, but to stand in respect. No one said much, they didn't need to. They'd seen the tattoo, they'd felt the shift, and now the silence wasn't just the old man's, it was theirs too. As the sun climbed higher, painting long shadows across that somber wall, Reyes realized something profound. This wasn't just about remembering the past, it was about honoring it, keeping it alive in those fragile, fleeting moments before the world woke up. And now, in their own small way, these young Marines were part of it, learning a truth that hit hard: courage and kindness don't always roar. Sometimes they whisper, lingering in the stillness, in the shadows, where the truest, most heartfelt stories wait to be heard. It wasn't official, no orders had been barked, no memos scribbled and sent. Yet, by the third Sunday of that month, something astonishing stirred the stillness. Can you imagine it? More than a dozen Marines, young warriors with fire in their veins and veterans with scars etched deep, awake before the sun even dared to brush the sky with light. They stood near the wall, not in crisp lines or rigid formation, but scattered like sentinels in a sacred vigil, pairs here, loners there, all wrapped in a respectful silence that hummed with meaning. Far enough not to crowd, close enough to feel the weight of what they witnessed. What was it about this old man that pulled them from their bunks? Was it curiosity tingling in their bones? A flicker of respect glowing brighter each week? Or something heavier, something unspoken that gripped their hearts and wouldn't let go? No one dared call it a formation. No one shouted for attention. They just stood there, drawn by a force they couldn't name, a need to be present that defied explanation. Reyes, as always, edged closest to the old man. That tattoo, God, it haunted him. He hadn't asked about it again, he didn't need to. But something gnawed at his gut, a restless whisper that this wasn't just a visit. Could this man be more than a mourner? Was he woven into the wall itself, not in the chiseled names, not carved in cold stone, but in the aching silence that hung between the lines, in the shadows of stories never told? Reyes felt it, deep and unshakable. That morning, the air bit harder, a chill that sank into their bones, the sky sagging low with a heaviness that pressed on their shoulders. The old man moved slower than usual, did you see it? His steps, once steady as a drumbeat, now dragged faintly across the gravel path, each crunch a quiet cry of the years he'd borne. He paused longer before the panel, his shoulders not slumped but bowed, as if the memories themselves were a cloak too heavy to shrug off. Reyes took a hesitant step forward, his heart thumping loud enough to drown out the world. "Sir," he murmured, voice soft as a prayer, "if I may, who are they?" The old man didn't answer. Not right away. His eyes, those weathered, storm-worn eyes, lingered on the same spot. Row 5, third panel. 7 names etched forever. Reyes knew them by heart now, could recite them in his sleep, all 7 marked Kia, March 18, 1970, from units shrouded in secrecy, officially erased from existence. Who were they really? They were my brothers, the old man said at last, his voice low and steady, a rumble of thunder rolling across decades. We dropped in together. Only one came out. Reyes blinked, his breath snagging in his throat. You were the one, he gasped, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. The old man gave the tiniest nod, so small you might have missed it, yet it carried the weight of a lifetime. They sent 8 of us in, south of the border. No maps, no backup, can you believe that? 2 teams flanked, shadows in the jungle. Ambushed at dusk. I carried 3 out, my arms burning, my heart breaking. 2 made it for a moment, 1 didn't last the night. He paused, his gaze drifting far beyond the wall, lost in the green hell of memory. The rest? Gone before the first shot's echo faded. Reyes couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. His chest tightened, the air thinning around him as if those words had sucked the life from the morning. The old man pressed on, his voice unwavering yet laced with a sorrow that time couldn't bury. They gave me a medal I didn't want, shoved it at me like it could fix anything. Wrote up a report they buried in some dusty drawer, told me to move on. So I did. I came home, I shut my mouth, and I've come here every Sunday for 53 years, 53 years. Why here? Reyes whispered, his voice trembling, barely holding together under the weight of that question. Because their names are here, the old man said, his eyes locked on the wall, fierce and unyielding. Even if mine isn't. Behind them, Buckner and 2 others stiffened, their spines snapping straight with a reverence they couldn't hide. They hadn't budged, but every word had pierced them, washing over them like icy water, chilling them to their cores. They weren't just standing beside an old man anymore, oh no. They were beside a legend, the last survivor of a mission erased from history, a man who'd carried silence longer than most of them had drawn breath. Reyes stepped closer, boots crunching softly on the gravel. Sir, what's your name? He asked, his voice a mix of awe and urgency. The old man turned slowly, deliberately, like every move was a choice carved from stone. He reached into his pocket, fingers trembling just a touch, and pulled out a weathered metal coin. On one side, a faded insignia, Delta 7. On the other, 2 words scratched by hand, not machine, still here. Could it be more perfect? Staff Sergeant Samuel Greer, he said, voice steady as granite. First Recon, SOG. Then he pressed the coin into Reyes's hand, closing the young Marine's fingers around it with a grip that felt like a vow. I carried that for a long time, he said. Time for someone else to know what it means. Reyes couldn't find words, his throat locked tight, emotion surging like a tide. The metal warmed his palm, but it weighed more than any challenge coin he'd ever clutched, heavy with the ghosts of history itself. Greer's gaze swept over the gathered Marines, piercing and calm. You know why I come every week? He asked, his voice a quiet challenge. Reyes nodded, swallowing hard. To remember, he whispered. The old man's lips twitched, a half-smile, fleeting and bittersweet. No, he said, I come because they can't. And with that, he turned back to the path. As he walked away, the crowd of Marines parted like the sea, no salutes, no words, just quiet nods, reverent and strange. The gravel sang beneath Greer's boots, a steady crunch-crunch until he vanished beyond the tree-line. When the silence fell, Reyes glanced down at the coin, then up at the wall. Those 7 names stared back, glowing like spirits caught in time. The next Sunday, oh, what a shift. No announcement blared, no command barked orders. Yet by 0600, over 20 Marines had gathered near the memorial wall. They weren't there to train or chatter, some in crisp uniforms, some in faded sweats, a few clutching coffee cups, their voices hushed. But when Staff Sergeant Samuel Greer emerged at the gravel's edge, a hush swallowed them whole. He walked as he always had, alone, deliberate, a rock unchanged by storms. Same worn jacket, same thermos dangling from his hand, same slow rhythm in his step. But now, a path cleared for him before he even asked, and no one dared break the silence. He approached the wall, pausing before those 7 names, his brothers. This time, he didn't flinch at the crowd. He stood still, as if their quiet was a tribute he'd earned. Reyes lingered a few steps back, the coin nestled in his right breast pocket, right where he'd tucked it a week ago. He hadn't spilled Greer's words to anyone, he didn't need to. They all felt it, a current running through them. Buckner had dug up the names from dusty archives, laminated them, and pinned them to the barracks board, never listed, never forgotten. Another Marine scratched the spot on the base map, dubbing it Greer's Wall. Someone else sank a brass plaque into the earth behind the panel, in memory of the 8. One still walks. No one asked Greer, they wouldn't dare. That morning, as Greer faced the wall, a young lance corporal named Jensen stepped forward. No words, just action. He set a single .45 ACP round on the concrete below the names and stepped back. Then another Marine followed, and another, dog tags clinking, challenge coins gleaming, unit patches laid like offerings, some just pressing a hand to the black granite in silent awe. Greer didn't stop them, didn't even glance their way. But for the first time Reyes could recall, he lingered longer, the dawn light catching the lines on his face. When he turned to leave, he met each Marine's gaze for a heartbeat before passing through. No words, none needed. From that day, the wall was never alone again. Staff Sergeant Greer never craved applause. Can you imagine him boasting in a bar, medals pinned to his chest? Never. He just showed up, week after week, standing in silence before 7 names carved into cold black stone, names of men he carried in his soul. For decades, no one noticed, until one Marine, Reyes, looked past the jacket, past the routine, past the quiet, and saw the truth etched in his skin. Since that day, the walls never stood solo. Young Marines gather now, not by order, but by instinct, drawn to something holy in that space. History doesn't always shout, does it? Sometimes it waits, patient and still, to be seen. Greer's story stirs something deep in me, a quiet, aching admiration for the strength veterans like him carry, often unseen. His lifestyle, one of solitude and reflection, isn't loud or flashy, but it's heavy with meaning. Every Sunday, standing before that memorial wall, he honors his fallen comrades in a way that feels sacred, personal, and raw. It's not about recognition, it's about memory, loyalty, and a love that doesn't fade. What hits me hardest is how this ripples outward. The young Marines, at first oblivious, come to see him, really see him, and it changes them. That shift, from ignorance to reverence, is beautiful. It's a social view I hold dear, that the stories of those who've lived through sacrifice can teach us, unite us, if we just pay attention. Greer's silent ritual becomes their bridge, a wordless lesson in respect and history. I'm moved by this, by how quiet strength can shout louder than words, knitting generations together. It's heartwarming and humbling, a reminder that true heroism often whispers. We need to honor that, to listen, because in that stillness lies the weight of everything worth remembering. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone who never bragged, never explained, but bore a story so deep it changed you? If you have, shout their name in the comments, share who they were. Let the world know they mattered. Subscribe to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories, where justice shines, kindness lingers, and no quiet heroism slips away.